This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everyone. If you are a parent who has decided that private school is probably the best for my child, where do you start with that? How do you pick the school? How do you go through the application process, which is, just be honest here, more complicated than you probably realize? We're going to talk with an educational consultant, and this is what she does, helps walk that journey with parents and their children in finding a private school. She is Erin Gevertz. She's back with us. How are you doing today?
Hey, Steve, I'm doing great. Thanks. Nice to see you again.
You too. You too. And I would love if we could start with an email that we got. By the way, instant feedback, Steve at gmail.com, best way to reach us. Um, we've talked about this briefly, financial aid, and never dug deeper into it. So we've got Andrew from Chicago says, I appreciate your conversation. Private schools can be expensive and financial aid seems overwhelming. What's the best way to approach tuition conversations, and how can a family maximize their chances of getting the most amount of aid?
Absolutely. Most of the schools, so the first question you want to find out from a school that you're considering is, do they even offer financial aid? There are some private schools out there that do not. And so if you're a family and you're looking at the cost of the tuition and it doesn't work for you, step one is typically on an admissions website. They'll have something about tuition assistance or financial aid. People call it different things. So step one is that. Step two is they schools will often have a form that you fill out that will ask for information, kind of like FAFSA for college, but this is for the high school or middle school or kinder, that asks about your income and your assets, and gives the school an idea of your financial standing. And most schools award money to families based on a demonstrated need, right? So if the school costs $60,000 and your family's making $150,000, you will definitely qualify for some money with that school, because that's not reasonable. I think so. My other advice to families is to be honest and transparent with schools with like their questions and wonderings. Those folks are there to help you. They want to make sure that they're answering all your questions and you feel confident applying and that it could be a good match. So once you've determined a school might be a good match for your kid, if you're considering applying for financial aid, you could reach out to admissions and say, hey, can I please chat with your business office? I've never applied for financial aid before. I'd love to have a conversation with someone about how it works. A lot of schools, at least here in the Bay Area, also host a financial aid like how to and Q&A. So if a school offers that kind of a meeting, a general meeting for all the folks considering applying, definitely go to that. Bring all your questions. I'm sure other folks have the same questions as you too.
Is there
Yeah.
any universal formula, if you will, when it comes to financial aid? Certainly, if your salary is close to what the school is charging, no brainer there. But is there any, because I look at it through the when it comes to public colleges, there's a little bit of rule of thumb there where you can kind of figure it out. Is it any insight on that for private schools?
You know, I don't think so. It's not as clear as, like you're saying, for public colleges where there's clear lines and you might get this amount from the state or this amount, whatnot, Cal grants, etc. Um, no. And
Mhm.
schools use different forms to collect their information. There's the PFS, there's TADS, there's FACS, there's FAST, there's Clarity. So you might be filling out, depending on what schools you're applying to, you might be filling out different forms. But no, there's not one. And also depends how much the school costs, the cost of living where you live. Schools are taking all of this into account because they really want to make it work for families. But, I was chatting with someone the other day and they said they had a family applying for a school who didn't want to give up their golf country club membership to potentially afford the high school. So there might be questions, about privilege and how schools are It feels like you're being judged for how you spend your money, and
Mm,
you kind of are. But simultaneously, if the school's worth it for you, maybe not having that resource for a couple years is,
right.
is worth it for you.
Would you say that it comes under the heading of can't hurt to ask? Why not ask?
Absolutely. And yeah, definitely ask, definitely apply, and a school will tell you no. I also, a friend of mine runs an organization called Financial Aid Navigators. And if you are a family anywhere in the United States looking for help applying to financial aid at a K through 12 or college level, I would look up financial aid navigators, and they have folks who are there to help you essentially look at all of your income, all of your assets, and tell your story. Because the one thing to add to your first question, what can I do to maximize? You fill out a form and you get a bunch of numbers, but there's also an ability to write a narrative to accompany that form. So you have the numbers and then you have the story that accompanies the numbers, because everyone's finances are more than just numbers. Maybe you're helping to pay for an elderly parent who is, who's not on your taxes, or maybe you have additional costs for healthcare stuff that are not, represented somewhere. So financial aid navigators, write me down as your referral.
Mm.
And and they're a great resource for families everywhere to help you tell your financial story to the school, so that then you can potentially maximize your benefit of getting the aid.
So, financial aid, things may be taken care of, but I have to believe there's probably a lot of other additional costs that come with school, certainly private school.
Mhm.
How do we look at that?
Mhm. Yes, there are. Some schools will say their price is all inclusive, but then you have to go buy a computer. So those are phenomenal questions to ask about as you're going to on school visits, to open houses, or even just in emails directly to to the team of admissions. Yeah, asking about things like, do sports cost extra? Do field trips cost extra? Trips, um, books. Um, yeah, asking about additional costs is absolutely something I encourage families to do, and schools are very transparent with that. They want to make sure that it works. Another thing that a lot of schools do to make things affordable for folks is, let's say if a school costs $20,000 and you're paying 10,000 and the school's paying the other 10, a lot of schools will do a thing where you will get 50% off of the cost of the trip, or 50% off of the cost of like whatever your percentage of aid you're paying is what percentage you'll of the cost of the additional thing you'll pay. So that helps to make it a little bit more equitable.
In my journey, even in the past year, not school related, I'm piloting more by get it in writing. So those additional costs, is that reasonable to say, can I have that documented? Let's say you're on a tight budget. You really want to get your child into private school. Maybe they help out with some financial aid, but it's still going to be a crunch because you're on a, tight economic situation. Now school has begun, you're 4 months in, and now you got to buy this equipment. You've got to pay for this. There's other instruction, da 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 da. Da. Is it reasonable to ask to have it documented?
And a lot of schools do. They'll often have on their websites, they'll say this, general cost of this or general cost of that. And I think, yeah, asking for it in writing is a great idea, and asking the questions as you're getting to know the school is definitely a great place to get that information too.
So while we're talking about finances, you mentioned this briefly a while back, but there's costs involved in applying to a private school. What about help with that? How does that look?
Yeah. If you're a family who is applying for a private school, there's something called a fee waiver. And so oftentimes it costs, 75, 80, $100 to just apply to just apply to the school. And sometimes that cost, especially right now, can be really hard for people. And so if having that cost alleviated would be a help for your family, do not be shy and ask the school for a fee waiver. It can sometimes feel hard for families to advocate for what they need in that situation, or like you're asking for too much, or is this going to have a negative impact? But most of the schools, at least schools I know that I work with, they want a range of families coming in, including families from all across the socioeconomic spectrum. And so if that $100 is a deal for your family, please ask for the fee waiver code or a reduced application fee, and you'll often be able to get that. There's even fee waiver codes to apply for financial aid. So there's a cost to apply for financial aid. And so there's a fee waiver code you can get just to complete that application to save you that $45 or $50 as well.
So I'm not sure if I'm saying this right, but I heard something called needs blind. And how does that apply to financial aid?
Yeah. So there are some common terms that you'll see or hear about with schools, um, and needs blind. So in an ideal world, needs blind would mean we're going to get 100 applications. We're looking for 50 kids. We're going to start to sort. We want these kids, maybe these kids are not a good fit. And all the kids that we really want, we're just going to be able to offer them admission, and whatever they can pay, they'll pay. Those who can pay full price will pay full price, and it will all work out. Even though most independent schools are nonprofit organizations, they're not for profit, they still need families who can pay the full price and get the money so that they can then afford to help other families who have that need. So the way that I explain needs blind to my families is typically the first one or two readings of the applications, because there's a whole, admissions decisions are made by committees.
Mm,
So you have a first round read, a second round read, and generally those might be blindly read. You're not thinking about financial aid at that part. But once it gets to that third reading and you're starting to fill in the blanks and make sure you have that tuba player that you need, or you have kids from 15 different zip codes or whatever schools are looking for, then money does start to come into play. So I think it'd be better for schools to call it like a need aware. It's not quite blind,
mm.
but private schools make up their own rules. So
So it's their sandbox. We're playing in
that's right.
it. How do schools really determine what a need of a family is, and then who's actually ultimately going to qualify for that?
Mhm. Yeah, so from based on that financial aid form that you're filling out, that helps to determine the need of the family. Oftentimes, the form will give you something that's called an EFC, an estimated family contribution. So that number, depending on the form you're filling out, you may or may not see that EFC, but that number helps you, the family, to they say, okay, in my mind, I'd like to pay $10,000 for this school, but this form is telling me I can pay $20,000 for this school. And unfortunately, with private school, that's not what you want to pay. It's not pay what you want.
Hmm.
It's pay what you can afford. And so having that EFC helps to give you a general sense of what the schools are going to estimate that you could pay, which is why having the numbers plus a document kind of explaining your financial story helps to potentially make a more aligned match with what you can actually afford to pay.
What about a family that you go into a private school, so you're pivoting from public, and many times, private schools, there's different financial situations and such. What if you're just barely getting by, but you think you can swing it, but your pride is in the way, and you're almost afraid to even, admit it, and be fully transparent because now you have others going to this private school who are affluent and doing fantastic financially. Yeah, you see where I'm going there? Where, it can be very uncomfortable.
Yeah, it can be. And I think, yeah, the pride thing is big. I come from a world of working with families, very low income families, helping them to come into private schools. That's where I started on this journey.
Sure.
And so, um, yeah, so pride is a big deal. That said, if you're considering like buying groceries for your family or paying for private school tuition, like a school wants you to be able to afford your life. They're not
Right.
saying they're not asking you to choose between those two things. And hopefully, you're able to put that pride aside for the benefit of your child and teach your child about advocating for what they need. If you need money from a school, you should apply for money from that school, right? If you need to ask for a fee waiver, ask for the fee waiver. The school has the resource, use the resource, right? It's partially like modeling behavior for your kids because we live in a world where money is a thing. And so especially with high school stuff, like sometimes it does come down. Sometimes I have families who really want to go to a school, but they didn't get the money they need. And it's an unfortunate conversation to have with your child. And no one should ever take out a loan to go to high school. That's not what anybody wants to do. There's a range of great schools out there that we can help you find if that one that you really hoped for wasn't going to work. So
And especially if you're sending your child to private school, to your point, taking out a loan for, high school, not to be done,
don't do it.
there's a pretty good chance that they're going to college and you're going to have to be affording that at some point.
Right.
So, deep, important question here with all of this. What if the school offers some financial aid? You
Mhm.
know, you're looking at that, but you still can't afford it. Can you appeal what they've offered to you? Does that ever happen?
It does. And it's definitely, that is, yes, you can certainly appeal to get aid that you need. If a school says, we believe you can pay $20,000 and you say, I believe I can pay $5,000, that's a pretty big gap. And you would really need to demonstrate the need, like writing a letter, explaining more than information that they already have. But yes, appeals can certainly happen, particularly within like the $1,000 to $10,000 window. That is something, if the school's already given you a big chunk of money and you need 5,000 more dollars to really make it work, you can appeal, and likely that can happen. It's not going to be a same day thing. They have money going out, money coming in. Decision week is kind of exciting and hectic all at the same time. But if they've offered you admission and they've offered you money, they really hope to make it work. And I think that that's part of why working with a program like Financial Aid Navigators would be helpful, because you're front loading all of that. It is a cost program. It is something that you would pay for, but it's an investment in like your peace of mind at the end of this program, at the
Sure.
end of the process. Yeah.
Well, the whole process and the peace of mind, Erin, this is all new territory for us parents. Like everything we've talked about here today, I wasn't even aware of. That how to ask, the whole application process, even getting the fees waived. I'm going to say it. I'd always be afraid to ask them to waive the fees because I don't want to, how do I say this? Kick the hornet's nest. Like, all right, we'll just pay that fee because, we want them to know that we're happy that they're even considering us,
Right.
our child. But this is why we have you to know that that's okay.
Yeah. And if a school is talking about their values and they value diversity and diverse socioeconomic backgrounds and people coming from different neighborhoods, like, then they should have a fee to help a fee waiver to help families cover that cost, right? They should offer financial aid to families to help make it affordable for a range of people out there. So if the school's talking about that as one of their values, don't be afraid to use it. It's there for you.
All right. So you mentioned, final question here. You mentioned diversity, inclusion. Let's say that that is important to you. What question, as a parent, can you ask the school to get a real sense of what they're committed to when it comes to those values? I mean, it's one thing to see what's in their mission statement, but if diversity is very important, how do you approach that one?
Yeah. I would look at, so they number schools have statistics on their website. You can look at how many, and diversity means different thing to different people. It could be
Yes.
talking about racial and ethnic diversity, socioeconomic, zip codes, family structure, LGBTQ, all kinds of things. So you get to decide what that means for you and what you really want to know. And then very often on schools' websites, they'll have information about racial and ethnic diversity percentages of students, self-identified of students at the school, of staff and faculty at the school. I believe it's important that kids have, people who look like them across the board in all ranges of the school. And oftentimes schools will have affinity groups for
Hmm.
kids. So affinity group is where, like, as I'm Jewish, so there might be a group of Jewish kids who get together and we have that connection. And this is the same for different races and ethnicities and other religions, or family structures, adopted kids, affinity groups, so that you know that you're not alone at the school, as you make your friends from, everywhere else. And yeah, I would ask about that. Ask about how do you support kids. Also ask to talk if you belong to a part, if you're African American and you want to talk to another Black family, like ask to talk to somebody who goes to that school. Ask to talk to somebody who identifies as XYZ. And the admissions team should put you in touch with them so that you can hear at least one or two perspectives of a current family, who you identify with.
What do you want parents to know at this juncture? We've talked about a lot here: selecting the school, financial aid, questions to ask, so much more. Is there anything that maybe we didn't get to, or just something that you want to reinforce?
Hmm. I think that if I think it's a really exciting opportunity for you to explore your school options when when you're at these critical junctures of kindergarten and middle school and high school. I think it's a really exciting opportunity for you to explore some schools that are out there and just see what's out there. If your family is set on going the private public school route, as I did when I was growing up, great. Simultaneously, maybe you go look at another school or two just to see. So I think being open-minded is a really important thing. Knowing when to ask for help and calling in for help is also great, right? Delegating some of that work. That's why I just met with a family earlier today. I was helping a parent revise their parent statement. They made my job really easy because they wrote it really well, but I was still able to point out a few pointers of what they might want to add. So, using a consultant or someone like me to help you navigate this process, to take some of that load off your shoulders, I'm happy to help you connect with someone else who's in your
Mm.
area who might be helpful for you. Do apply for financial aid if you need it. Don't go into a school paying full price one year and thinking, well, next year I'll apply and I'll get half off of my tuition because I really need it. Because schools have a certain amount of money that they typically give to, like, the incoming ninth grade class. And there might not be that money for you next year. So if you need money the year that you're going in, apply for it that year. Um, and I think the last thing is, yeah, have fun with the process. It's a lot of work.
Exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's really exciting. And keep a positive attitude for your kid. Most kids do really well in a range of schools, right? So be careful with your language around how you talk about schools or badmouth schools, because your kid might end up there and that's not going to feel good for them if they end up going to a school that you've been saying not so nice things about.
So much we've discussed and so much you bring up. And as a parent, you said two words a moment ago, and that would right away, I'm like, I can't, I'm not handling this alone. Parent statement. You have to provide a parent statement. You don't even have to tell me what that is, but I already, I'm like, I thought I was just going to apply to the school. There's a lot involved in the application process. This is
Listen to episode 2 for that one.
there you go. This is what I'm learning from you. Erin, what's the best way to connect with you?
Thanks, Steve. So my email is Erin, Erin, at ERINGEVERTZ.com. My website is eringevertz.com. You can find me on YouTube. If you're writing a parent statement, I have a great video up there to help you write a parent statement. If you want help editing it, reach out to me and we can make some time to do that. If you're making an interview, you want help interviewing, preparing your kid or you, the adult, for an interview, please reach out. And good luck with your process. I hope everything goes well for y'all.
Awesome. You're not just an educational consultant, you are a resource, even down to the financial, with a connection for that and so much more. Thank you for all the info and the insight. Truly appreciate these podcasts and you for being here today.
Have a good day.
You too. We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.